Hey there. Are you selling on Amazon in the US and you're thinking about going internationally, maybe into Canada, maybe into Europe, and you're just thinking, well, am I actually going to get sales or am I just going to send stuff into a black hole and not make any money? Well, we're going to go ahead and show you in this video some steps you can take to use real customer data of what people are actually buying on Amazon outside of the US to see if it's worth at least trying when you're selling in these other marketplaces. So we'll go ahead and get into it. But before I get into it, I just want to say, whatever you do for your product research in the US, we just got to change up we'll say the lens that we're looking at things through, because oftentimes we're looking at things in the US from the sense of like, okay, maybe I have to order 1,000 units of a product. And so to make that profitable or worth your while, you really have to look at it as, okay, I got to sell a certain number of units a day to make that worth my while. But what if you just took that same 1,000 units that you're ordering for the US and you just take a small portion of it and you send it into Canada and maybe another small portion you send it to the UK? Now you're potentially selling through that inventory faster, which will get you profit faster, which is all a good thing. So my general philosophy is when you're looking at other marketplaces, what you're trying to do is determine are people buying similar products to mine? And if they are, it's at least worth looking at. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of ones where I would say, okay, that's a definite, I would go after it. And then another couple where it's like, well, why don't we evaluate that? And I'll give you reasons as to why I would evaluate it. Now, if you decide that selling internationally is for you, in the description, I've got a link to internationalchecklist.com where you can go and download a free checklist. I call it a checklist, but it's really 16 pages long. It's kind of more of a mini guide that'll take you through step by step what you can do to build your own international empire. It's been a game changer for me. I'd love it for it to be for you as well. So, all right, so let's go ahead and kick into how you can check to see what chances you have of selling internationally with your products. So I'm just going to use an example of, I've taken Amazon.com and Amazon.ca, logged out so none of my history affects the results. So if I go and look up water bottle in Amazon.com, and we'll look up water bottle on Amazon.ca. And I'm going to use Jungle Scout. You can use Jungle Scout or whatever your favorite product research sales approximation tool is. Now, granted, any approximation tool, we're going to use it just to give us a ballpark figure. We're not going to say this is exactly what it's going to be. This is just at least giving us data of, will customers buy a product similar to mine? So as it's downloading here, the thing I just want to go through with everyone is the numbers are, I'm going to pretty much guarantee you, the numbers when you're looking in another country are going to be smaller than they are in the US. The US is pretty much a unicorn. Generally speaking, people tend to see about 10% of the sales they see in the US and other marketplaces. There's no guarantee, but what we're checking here is just to see, okay, are people at least buying other products? Because we can send in a small batch to test and then get some data and then make intelligent decisions on how much inventory to send into another marketplace. So here, water bottle on the first data set, which is about the first page, Jungle Scout is showing average monthly sales of about 1,600 sales per month. And in Canada, they're saying it's about 117. So that's a little less than 10%. So you might be saying, well, is that even worth doing? So I would say if you're looking at numbers that might even be as low as 15, 30, 60 a day. So let's say a month. These are monthly numbers. Think of it this way. If you have a product and you see it's selling potentially on that first page, the average ones are selling about 30 units a month. And that might be to you 1 or 2 units a day. Let's just say hypothetically. When you look up the numbers, it might be 1 or 2. It might be a little less than that, but let's just say on average, you look across a portfolio of products, and it's looking like the market's bearing about 1 or 2 sales a day. Well, think of it this way. what do you do to get 1 or 2 sales a day on your products? And you'd be still thinking, okay, 1 or 2 sales a day doesn't sound that great. But let's say you have 5, 10 products. Now we're talking 5, 10, 20 units in my 5 to 10 scenario here. And you might have more products, and you might even be able to get even more sales out of this. Think of what you will do to get those sales. And if you try on eBay or Etsy or Shopify, chances are you're probably not making the same type of sales you're making on Amazon in the US. So this is basically something where you don't have to learn a whole new marketplace. Really, you're just sending it into Amazon in another country, and it's coming back, bringing you more sales, so to speak. So I'm going to show you here a couple other things that we can go over just to make sure that we're giving ourselves the best chance of looking at data intelligently to make sure it's going to be a good decision to at least try out in other marketplaces. Now, I know I said 10%, and you may be saying that's, again, like you said earlier, Kevin, that's not 10%. So 1,600 monthly sales and 117 monthly sales. Well, one thing I just want to throw out there is you're going to notice as you're looking through here, it's not going to be the same products. The competition's not as high. People also, or sellers and brands, are generally not sending in as many variations. And oftentimes these tools are taking sales across all variations because they tend to, if they're in one parent-child family, they tend to make one bestseller ranking. So for example, one that I was looking at earlier was this one here. So if I look up this Contigo Auto Seal bottle. So this one here, selling for $29.89. Just keep in mind when you look at prices in another marketplace, it's not US dollars. So that's probably closer to $23 US in price. But let's just take the ASIN, and I'm taking this here from a third-party tool, but here's the ASIN where you can always find it here. It's always on Amazon. And so if I put in that ASIN, it's this one here. In the US, pulls that up. So one thing we notice here, the US, we're talking about literally the same product. So it's part of a parent-child family combination. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 variations of color. And here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 variations of color in the US. So sorry, Canada has 7, US has 12. So you can see that could affect things. So if products, when you're looking at products, if they have fewer variations, especially higher volume products, that might make that 10% number seem lower because the US might just have more sales because there's also more units. Generally speaking, what I've found with clients I work with, if you send in more products, you get better sales in other marketplaces. I mean, it just goes to speak, if you're selling in the US, if you have 5 different products you're selling versus if you have 20 different products you're selling, generally speaking, you're going to do better with more products. This point being, and more variations. Doesn't work with every single product, but I think you get what I mean, where basically it's not always apples to apples when you're looking at things. So I would say it's absolutely worth your time to try out if you're selling water bottles, for example, because like I said earlier, the competition's not as high. And even if you're only getting 1 or 2 sales a day, as opposed to the average it was showing was about 4 units a day in Canada, it's at least worth it because, again, that's additional sales you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Now, let's look at a different product that's not water bottle, because water bottle is kind of a generic product, pretty high volume at the same time too, but like a lot of competition. So let's look up fishing lures. So we'll pull back up Jungle Scout. And while that's loading, I just want to say, if you have any questions or feedback on this process, feel free to leave a comment down below. Now, fishing lure on the first page is getting... I'm going to pause this real quick. Oh, no, it's coming up. So fishing lures on the first page in Canada is getting about 14 units per month. Whereas in the US, it is getting 299. So it's about 5%. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. Right now, as I record this, it's January. I live in Florida. People go fishing year round. In the US, you have people with a variety of different climates they're living in. So sometimes you have to look at the seasonal nature of a product and how another country might affect it. So if I'm in Canada, you might be looking at this in 14. That's half a unit a day, basically. Is that even worth it? Well, let's think of it this way. So let's take this one here. Let's look at some sales history on it. And there's various tools you can use to look at it. I've got Helium 10 loaded on my computer. You can use things like Keepa and things like that to go back and look at the history of the product. But here, as it loads it, let's talk a little bit about the history. So as we know, it all comes down to bestseller ranking as to what the history of that is. So let's look at it all time. So really, it was just kind of getting off the ground in 2018. And so let's look at 2019. So 2019, as you can see, as it gets tighter to the bottom here, what that's telling us is the bestseller ranking is better. So that means it's making more sales. So here, I'm recording this in January, where it was all over the map. And then here, as it starts getting into the summer months, which would make sense when people are probably outside more in Canada, it's tighter to the bottom here. Let's compare it to the same product in the US to see if my theory here holds true. So let's take the ASIN, I should say. Let's paste that in here. And let's take a look at the sales history. So look at it all time. So one thing you notice here, it's similar in that it's tighter in the summer months. Now, one thing I will point out here, notice how it's like kind of fighting for bestseller rankings really below 100,000 in the US, whereas the same product in Canada is pretty much consistently below 10,000 in the category in the summer months. So it goes back to what I was saying before of there's less competition in Canada. So oftentimes your product maybe won't do as well in the US, but it could do even better in Canada relative to the competition. Now, this is probably still seeing more sales in the US, but if you think about it, this is ranking better against its competition in Canada than it was in the US. So that's making it a little more favorable to this product, actually, for testing it out. So if you're having trouble ranking for a product and you're trying to get through your units that you have by going into another marketplace, you might actually see more than 10% for your product. Can't really tell right off the bat with this product if that's the case, but think of it this way. Let's say it is just getting 10% of the sales it's getting in the US, it's seeing in Canada. So maybe it was on the border of being a successful product or not, but because it's getting additional sales in Canada, now all of a sudden it's pushing itself into being a successful product because it's selling through faster. And so that's avoiding inventory fees in the US for potentially long-term storage fees and things of that nature because you're going through it faster. There's still inventory fees if you do FBA in Canada, but those long-term storage fees you'd be less likely to hit because now you're making sales of units sooner in another marketplace that would have just gotten long-term storage fees in the US if everything was stored in the US. Hopefully that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, feel free to leave me a question down in the comment section below. But all right, so another thing I want to point out is when a product I would say isn't going to work. So let's say you sell decorations of some sort. So I'm just going to give an example. It's kind of a cultural thing. So let's say 21st birthday decorations. And let's look for the same thing in the US. All right, so let's go ahead and compare the two. We'll let it load. Now, this is an example. I'm showing this on purpose here because it comes down to the cultural aspects of other countries. So think of it this way, not everything is the same in Canada, even though the culture is very similar to the US, not everything is going to be the same, and there's going to be different reasons. So the last one I showed was where sometimes the seasonality might be a little different, but it might end up being more favorable during the peak season that something's selling, or at least it could be more favorable than 10%, I should say. Whereas here, so 21st birthday decorations, not a huge selling product, but it's one that's probably getting about 6 a day in the US, 184. It's having trouble loading here in Canada, but I did check this earlier, and it was dismal. And this would be one that it wasn't getting sales, and so it's the question of does it even make sense? So you can see here they're saying about 4 a day. Now, if you think about it, why would someone buy 21st birthday decorations? Well, it's because that's a big birthday, and they go out with their friends and they have a big party because 21st birthday, that's when people in the US could start drinking legally. Well, in Canada, the legal drinking age is 19. So 21st birthday is not a milestone. And another thing to keep in mind when you're looking here is like, okay, is there a reason why maybe the numbers might even make sense on one side of the equation or the other? So here I'm going to show you where Canada is not so favorable. It's even less favorable to this particular product, because if I go down here and I look up, there's this one here. It's the one that's getting the most sales, about 46 sales a month. So about 1.5 a day. So if you could get a product like that, I would say that's worth testing, because 1.5 products a day, like I was saying before, across a portfolio of products, that actually adds up very quickly. Especially when you compare again to the things that you might do for your product that don't yield that type of results. But here, this is birthday, and it's not 21st birthday. It's just a generic happy birthday there. So hopefully you can see that in that video screen. So that's skewing Canada upwards. Now, that just happens to be on this product. So that's also cluing us into why that's not a good product. So you want to look at and see on both marketplaces, is there anything that's skewing the data either way? So in the first one I was showing where it was kind of skewing favorably to the US, because in the US they tend to have, oftentimes products tend to have more variations, which each variation is adding up under one parent-child family. So that is causing the bestseller ranking to be higher, and then that's causing the numbers to look a little bit higher for that particular product. So if that's happening in that little niche, that could affect it. Or here we're looking at the other way, where kind of an sort of related but not really related product is bumping the sales up, because happy birthday is just a generic happy birthday, and that's not necessarily related to 21st birthday, because we're looking for something super niche. So just one of those things you want to look at and say, okay, if the data is off, is there a reason? And again, before pulling a trigger to say, well, is it even worth testing it for 4 units a month? Maybe it is for you. Maybe you just send in 12 units and you go through 3 months of product and it's worth testing. In this case, I would say no. With the fishing lures, I would say yes, because you could get up and running, get some sales data before, let's say it's before the summer season. Now all of a sudden you're getting some, you're there for that peak time of it. So hopefully this is all making sense and you're finding this to be helpful of ways the product going to sell. Now, again, there's no guarantee, but what you're going to learn is by at least testing, you're going to find out if it's at least worth trying. And these numbers can at least clue you into, how much is at least worth testing? Because you could take, let's say 2 months worth of inventory of what you think it might sell. And you can even go more conservative than that, because what's going to end up happening is you're going into a new marketplace, new algorithm. So it's going to take, a little bit of time for you to build up to getting, whatever those sales are. But think of it as you have this long-term sales channel up in your business. That's where I get really excited when I think about it, because it's a great way to bring in additional revenue that you would not have gotten otherwise, because you're reaching customers that you would not have reached otherwise. So again, hopefully you found this to be helpful. And if you did, I'd love it if you can give a quick thumbs up, as well as subscribe to this channel if you're not already subscribed. And if you're looking for more information on how you can go deeper into building your international empire, in the description, as well as you can go to internationalchecklist.com. In the description is a link, and it'll take you to a checklist where you can download. It takes you through step by step how you can grow your international empire and expand your sales on Amazon using their international marketplaces, which is almost like leaving money on the table if you're not there. So thank you for making it all the way through, and I'm wishing you the best in your e-commerce journey. Take care.